The mysterious West Mountain base has finally surfaced. They found out that I possess a massive amount of materials. Consequently, I've been targeted by this powerful underground force. After dealing with Lufunga, he predictably set up a program in advance. He sent a text message to everyone in Heavenly Sea City. My smoke bomb successfully drowned out this message. Not even a ripple was stirred. Moreover, the content of Lufunga's text message merely revealed my identity and address, as well as the possibility of possessing stolen goods from the Walmart warehouse, and in huge quantities. Huge quantities doesn't mean all of it. Such ambiguous expression lacks a clear quantitative standard. After all, how could he know about spatial abilities? And I've sent hundreds of fabricated messages. It's very hard for ordinary people to discern which is true. If someone does manage to find me, they won't be just any ragtag group, or they might have top computer experts. I continue practicing with my bow and arrow. After nearly half a month of relentless training, I seem to have expanded my spatial ability, developing some unique powers. This ability can attach to weapons and projectiles, enhancing their power and accuracy. With the aid of this ability, I can hit a target 400 meters away with a single arrow. Then, I had an idea. What if I apply this ability to close combat weapons, or even to my body? The results were surprisingly good. With the ability enveloping my body, the air resistance I faced greatly reduced. My speed increased manifold. With greater speed, my dodging ability also improved, making escapes much quicker. I've grown to like the abilities I possess. Though they seem simple, they have infinite developmental potential. I can even feel that I've only scratched the surface of an iceberg. I can't imagine how powerful it would be if fully developed. Suddenly, my stomach growled. I quickly took out 2 chocolate bars and stuffed them into my mouth. It seems this ability does consume a lot. After all, power comes from cells. To maintain strength, I must replenish with food. That means, the strength of a mutant depends on the amount of food they have. No matter how powerful the opponent's abilities, without food, they can't use them. Thinking of the inexhaustible supplies in my own space, in that case, am I not invincible? At least, I can wear them down with unlimited supplies. Meanwhile, in an underground shelter, Chen, the leader of the West Mountain organization, is worried about the base's energy problems. Just then, the Secretary Guro enters with a stack of documents, slowly saying, "The information we received earlier has been investigated. All messages come from Heron's River District, Lark Manor, mostly from Villa 101 in Lark Manor. However, one message is special. It came from the mobile phone of Lufunga, chairman of the Intelligent Cloud Group. His home is in Lark Manor, Villa 302. Chen takes the report and ponders for a moment. Give me a detailed report on Zhang Yi mentioned in the report. I want to know what a mere warehouse manager can stir up. Secretary Guro meticulously reports Zhang Yi's information to Chen. Upon learning that he's just a small warehouse manager, Chen expression immediately becomes uninterested. Just a petty thief. Most likely, he's been embezzling using his position. He's probably hoarded a lot of stolen goods until now. Even if this matter is somewhat related to him, the goods in his possession can't be that much. This guy definitely isn't the mastermind behind the warehouse theft case. Guro immediately started flattering. The leader is absolutely right. How could such a small fry have such capabilities? Chen smiled slightly, showing a look of seeing through everything. This must be a foreign conspiracy. They must have received intelligence in advance, and thus withdrew the materials beforehand. Later, unable to justify themselves, they staged these self-directed dramas. Guro continued to butter up. The leader's judgment is indeed brilliant. How could these little tricks ever deceive the leader's legal eye? So, should I look into this Zhang Yi? Chen pondered for a moment. We haven't searched the Heron's River District area yet. Send a few people to take a look. Maybe we'll find clues about that batch of materials. After his last battle with me, his abilities were questioned by the villagers. Chun-Lei himself was deeply affected. He thought he was the chosen one in the script, possessing top-level abilities, then opening a harem and reaching the pinnacle of life. But he never imagined he would be so vulnerable. The sensitive Chun-Lei became increasingly decadent, rewarding himself 5 or 6 times a day, and whining about the world with his phone in hand. One day, browsing his phone out of boredom, the sudden influx of fake messages he received days ago seemed unusual to him. He vaguely felt this might be related to the mysterious person who scared him that day. As an otaku, Chun-Lei had some tricks up his sleeve regarding computers. He quickly spotted something fishy in the messages. The IP information source caught his attention. Zhang Yi, warehouse manager, Walmart's South warehouse theft case. This was the biggest news just before the apocalypse. Chun-Lei always thought it was a self-directed farce, but now it seems it wasn't unfounded. Did he really empty the Walmart warehouse all by himself? Chun-Lei suddenly became excited. The imaginations of otaku are naturally wild, and being a mutant himself, everything became understandable. This man named Zhang Yi might have awakened a spatial domain ability, like a vacuum cleaner with infinite capacity, capable of taking in a large amount of objects. The ice and snow he controlled disappeared in front of him that day, but later the ice and snow were released again. It wasn't as simple as a rebound attack. It was like my attack was taken into another space, then released in the opposite direction. At this moment, Chun-Lei had a realization. He must be a spatial mutant. The stolen goods from from the Walmart warehouse must be in his alternate space. No wonder he owned a luxurious snowmobile rarely seen in the South. Thinking of this, Chun-Li felt a huge blow. He actually possesses spatial abilities. How enviable compared to his. My abilities are several levels inferior. Is he the real protagonist? Am I just a weak antagonist? Will I become his experience bag? Chun-Li's mood took a great hit. After all, compared to such rare abilities, his ice and snow powers seemed too effeminate, and his abilities were completely countered by Zhang Yi's. It seems he really was just a small fry, destined to become Zhang Yi's experience bag. Chun-Li also realized the gap between his strength and Zhang Yi's. At that moment, an idea came to him. Since he couldn't defeat Zhang Yi, he decided to join him. That way, he could still be a secondary character. Thinking this, Chun-Li sprang up from his bed. I need to warn the villagers first. Don't provoke him. After all, there are too many fearless fools in the village. Chun-Li jogged all the way to the village chief Su Dongsheng's house. Breathlessly, he shouted urgently, "Third Grandpa, there's trouble. I have something very important to report to you." In the past, the village chief hardly bothered with a waste like Chun-Li. But now, since he awakened his ice and snow abilities, becoming the strongest fighter in the village, the chief had to give him some respect. Chun-Li immediately shared all the information he had with the chief. "We are no match for Zhang Yi. Lark Manor is too close to us. I suggest telling the villagers to stay away from there and better not to fish around that area either." However, the village chief seemed indifferent to these warnings, more intrigued by one piece of news. He looked at Chun-Li with wise eyes. "Are you saying the notorious Walmart warehouse theft case before the apocalypse was done by that guy, and all those billions worth of goods are in his hands?" Chun-Li nodded repeatedly. "It's very likely. He might have awakened a spatial ability and sneakily put all the goods into his alternate space." Hearing this, Su Dongsheng's eyes lit up. Muttering to himself, he said, "If we could seize those goods, our Su family town would never have to worry about food again." Chun-Li was shocked. "We really shouldn't be eyeing his goods." But Su Dongsheng looked disdainful. "You're too cowardly. Our village has thousands of people. Are we really afraid of one young boy?" Chun-Li was speechless for a moment. The chief continued thoughtfully, "You coward, afraid of death. When I was young, fighting with neighboring villages over water and land, didn't we always end up bloodied? Now, in these do-or-die times, for our Su family town, even if it costs a few lives, so what?" Chun-Li was extremely frustrated. His good intentions had backfired. Meanwhile, in Lark Manor, I was tasting the newly opened 1982 law fight with two sisters. If not for the dangers outside, life in this villa was like a paradise. Even Yang Mi, who had always fantasized about leaving after the apocalypse, was gradually immersed in this bliss, unable to extricate herself. Just then, a scream from outside shattered the tranquility. I suddenly stood up, wondering if someone was attacking us. I immediately sensed something was off and headed towards the balcony on the second floor. Taking out my infrared binoculars, I scanned the villa's surroundings. I saw a large group of shadows converging on the villa. Their identities were clear to me. They must be the villagers from the Su clan across the river. Considering the incident happened just 2 days ago, only such rash people would rush over without investigation. I retrieved a sniper rifle from my alternate space. Since they were so eager to court death, I was ready to oblige. They came in such numbers, clearly with ill intent. Anyone disturbing my peaceful life deserved death. However, these ordinary people were not much of a threat. The only concern was their mutant villager. If he also came, I would seize the opportunity to eliminate him as well. I searched the crowd for that mutant, letting the rest test the power of my traps. Meanwhile, the Su family town's advance team had reached the edge of the traps. Looking at the brightly lit villa not far away, it felt like a dream. After the frozen apocalypse, they had survived on stored food and fishing. How could they imagine that just across the river, in the affluent area, someone was living such a lavish life? One villager, lost in thought, walked forward. Suddenly, with a scream, intense pain shot up from his foot. The group quickly looked and found he had stepped on a board, its dense, sharp nails piercing through his foot. In such freezing temperatures, such a wound could be fatal. The team leader urgently ordered him to be carried away, alerting others to beware of traps. The village chief, commanding from the rear, heard the news and immediately issued orders. It seemed the other party had prepared in advance, but this couldn't stump Su Dongsheng. He instructed, use branches and sticks to probe ahead and advance slowly. I watched all this from afar, amused at their cleverness. The show was just getting started. Indeed, they managed to clear quite a few nail traps, and soon they were slowly closing in. Seeing the village chief cleverly counter the first wave of traps, the villagers got encouraged, gradually letting their guard down. Just at that moment, someone felt a resistance near their foot, as if they had tripped over a rope. The next second, a fireball shot into the sky. A huge explosion echoed through the heavens, instantly blowing a dozen people away. The villagers retreated in fear, but some hadn't walked far when they suddenly felt intense pain in their chests and faces. Lifting their clothes, they found they had avoided the explosion, but not the flying shrapnel. The injured villagers panicked, falling to the ground, rolling around and screaming. The team became chaotic. Suddenly, another loud bang. Someone carelessly triggered a grenade trap. The villagers were terrified, frantically scrambling back, but the snowy ground ground still harbored many nail traps. In the darkness, everyone was in disarray, losing their sense of direction. The scene was filled with wails and was extremely bloody. After the first attack, the villagers suffered heavy casualties. Continuous nail traps and explosions turned the scene into a horrific spectacle. Some villagers began to retreat. They had never been so embarrassed in previous battles. Only then did the villagers realize the seriousness of the situation. They had to call Chun-Lei. After all, Chun-Lei, who could manipulate ice and snow, was like a human cheat code in these icy conditions. The villagers surrounded the village chief. Chief quickly asked Chun-Lei to help. "We can't afford more casualties." Su Dongxing's expression turned grim. He thought about how Chun-Lei had warned him in the afternoon not to mess with Zhang Yi, and how he had scolded Chun-Lei for being cowardly. But now, the first wave of attack had left the villagers bewildered. Meanwhile, I was quietly observing all this with a sniper rifle in hand, wondering why the ice and snow mutant hadn't made a move yet. There were so many people, I couldn't tell which one was the mutant. The villagers were less than 200 meters from me. Killing them was as easy as flipping a hand. Even if that mutant hid and attacked from behind, as long as he was within 2,000 meters, I could still snipe him. Su Dongxing was caught between a rock and a hard place. But asking Chun-Lei for help was out of the question. He had already boasted in front of Chun-Lei, claiming he could take down Zhang Yi without his help. Moreover, asking a grandson for help was simply unthinkable for him. Su Dongxing steeled his heart and loudly scolded, "Do we really become useless without Chun-Lei, who hasn't set traps in the mountains when we were young? These child's play traps are only good for fooling wild boars. His house is just ahead. The monk may run, but the temple can't." Su Dongxing, for the sake of his own pride, chose to confront directly. He then handed a pair of binoculars to a villager. "Take a good look at that villa, see what's inside." Upon seeing the scene inside the villa, the villagers couldn't believe their eyes. The brightly lit house, the dining table laden with steaming delicacies, the luxurious furniture, and two fairy-like women leisurely enjoying their dinner. The villagers were tempted, but still apprehensive. After all, the snowy ground was full of traps. It still seemed better to call Chun-Lei. With Chun-Lei's abilities, just a slight effort would reveal all the traps in the snow. Hearing this, the village chief became furious. "You useless lot. It seems our village, except for Chun-Lei, is filled with cowards. If you're scared, then go back home now. Don't embarrass yourselves here." This reverse psychology worked wonders. The villagers' blood boiled, and they declared they were not cowards. They picked up their tools and continued clearing the traps. Seeing this, Su Dongxing nodded in satisfaction. "That's more like it. These child's play traps are nothing to be afraid of. With a bit of caution, they're harmless." After the village chief Su Dongxing's provocation, the villagers bravely continued to clear the traps. Learning from the first round of painful lessons, they quickly grew smarter. They started throwing snow blocks ahead from a distance, indeed triggering several traps. This boosted their confidence. "Just 100 meters more, and all the food and beauties inside will be ours." Su Dongxing also showed a smug smile. "I told you these childish traps are nothing. Shotgun team, keep up. They must have noticed us. Chun-Lei said they have guns. If they dare to shoot, we'll return fire immediately." The chief's cousin, a retired soldier, volunteered eagerly. "If that guy shows his face, I'll blow his head off." I watched all this through the scope, thinking they weren't too stupid. This method of clearing traps indeed hadn't crossed my mind, but the real show was yet to come. Primitive methods can only clear primitive traps. The upcoming high-tech ones should give them a real challenge. Yang Mi, having just finished eating, panicked upon seeing this situation. "There are so many people. If they break in, we're done for." Shou Kier, on the other hand, was calm. "I wonder how many will die this time," she said, not forgetting to mock the terrified Yang Mi. "Look at you, so cowardly. With that mouse-like courage, how will you ever follow our brother Zhang in the future?" The mountains of corpses and rivers of blood that Zhang Yi had created in the community. To Shou Kier, all this was indeed a minor scene. As they entered my controllable distance, I immediately activated the villa's active noise cancellation feature. The noise outside seemed to vanish in an instant. Then, I decisively pressed the landmine activation button. A massive roar erupted in the middle of the road, and in the instant of the fiery explosion, the entire villa area was as bright as day. Though I couldn't hear the screams outside, I could clearly see the gruesome scene. Body parts and blood were scattered everywhere. Yang Mi instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Accustomed to a life of luxury, she had never seen such a scene, and started vomiting violently against the table. Even Shou Kier, who had seen much, turned away, unable to bear the sight. Seeing this, I felt no ripples in my heart. After all, they brought this upon themselves. The elders commanding from the rear were stunned, their minds blank. They couldn't accept the reality before them. How could this be? A young man, mentally unhinged by the blast, ran over, grabbing the village chief's leg. Shaking, he stuttered, "Third grandpa, everyone's dead, their bodies blown to pieces. Let's run away." The village chief, shocked by the scene, collapsed to the ground. "Is he a devil? We just wanted to rob his goods and wife. How could he kill hundreds of our Su family? So many dead." As the village chief and instigator, he knew he couldn't escape responsibility. Overwhelmed, he knelt in the snow, babbling incoherently. I watched all this from the shelter, certain the ice and snow mutant hadn't come. With no need to keep these brutes alive, I took out a compound bow. After donning my cold weather gear, I commanded the shelter's AI system, open the front window. As the command was issued, the large bulletproof glass window slowly lifted. I then placed 3 arrows on the string. After over 10 days of training, with the enhancement of my spatial ability, I had mastered shooting 3 arrows simultaneously. Standing in the darkness, I began a merciless hunt. As the arrows flew, 3 villagers were instantly pierced through the head. The already powerful modern compound bow, boosted by my ability, was even more lethal. The silent arrows reaped life after life. The panicked crowd didn't realize they were being hunted. Finally, someone noticed and shouted to the villagers, "There's a hunter." The villagers with shotguns hurriedly aimed, but in the darkness, they couldn't determine the direction. I, however, could aim precisely with my infrared tactical scope. Seeing someone with a gun, I mercilessly prioritized hunting them. The villagers couldn't understand. The shelter was nearly 200 meters away, the wind and snow so heavy. How could any bow shoot so far and with such power? Watching the villagers fall one by one, Su Dongsheng was filled with regret. Recalling Chun Lei's earlier advice, he realized how arrogant and conceited he had been. He raised his hand and fiercely slapped his own face. I truly deserve to die. I have let down the ancestors of the Su family. I am the sinner of the Su family. I watched this through the scope, thinking if that's the case, I might as well grant him his wish. I drew the crossbow, ready to take him down, when suddenly a fierce snowstorm arose, quickly forming a tornado, blocking the path between the villagers and the shelter. I put away my bow and arrow, thinking, why come only now? Has the ice and snow mutant finally decided to intervene? I immediately switched to a sniper rifle, knowing that in such a storm, arrows would be ineffective. As a mutant, Chun Lei knew the gap between the villagers and Zhang Yi better than anyone. Hearing the huge explosion, the timid Chun Lei gathered his courage and came over. He exerted all his strength to control the snow, blocking the shelter's line of sight, while shouting to the villagers, "Run, run, I can't hold this for long." In the shelter, seeing all this, I gave up shooting. With the view obstructed, blindly firing would only waste precious bullets, especially since there were only a few hundred boxes of ammunition left in the alternate space. Maintaining such a large-scale blizzard must be exhausting, and with about a kilometer to escape back across the river, I thought he couldn't hold on for long. Thinking this, I took various protective gear from the alternate space, then fully armed, I went downstairs to bid farewell to my 2 wives. "You two go take a bath. Wait for me to come back." Watching the decisive Zhang Yi, Yang Mi felt a strong sense of security. Meanwhile, Chun Lei was still struggling to maintain the blizzard. Realizing the gunfire had stopped, he secretly rejoiced. As he stopped chasing, thinking his tactic worked, but then a loud roaring sound of an engine echoed. Everyone heard it, the sound of an engine. A snow SUV suddenly burst out from the snow. I engaged the auto drive and took out an assault rifle for indiscriminate firing. The villagers screamed in terror. "Chun Lei, he's coming. Use the blizzard to stop him." I looked in the direction of the voice, trying to spot the mutant among the crowd. Soon, a chubby figure caught my attention. While everyone was frantically running, only he occasionally turned back and gestured towards me. "It's you." With a loud bang, a bullet whizzed past Chun Lei's ear, barely missing death. Chun Lei, terrified, broke into a cold sweat. Then a makeshift sled rushed over. "Chun Lei, get on." I sat in the car, pondering for 2 seconds, thinking this was the perfect opportunity to eliminate the opposing mutant. I had no reason to let him go. With this in mind, I once again revved up the engine and chased fiercely. If I killed this mutant, the other villagers would be like lambs to the slaughter. But Chun Lei still maintained the blizzard around them, especially around himself, blocking it tightly. However, he only managed to visually impair my attack. The range of the blizzard was limited, unable to protect everyone. With that, I simply turned my gun and started shooting the panicking villagers. Watching the villagers fall one by one, Chun Lei was in immense pain, but he was powerless to save everyone while protecting himself. I watched this scene with a sinister smile, wanting to see whether he valued his own life or his villagers more. In my relentless pursuit, the villagers' dog sled stood no chance against my luxury snow SUV, especially since they were dragging the bodies of their kin, intending to bury them properly, which slowed them down considerably. It was then that Chun Lei realized the problem and urgently told the villagers to discard the bodies. Reluctantly, they did so, as burying the dead properly was of great importance to them, but they had no choice in this dire situation. These bodies slightly hindered my chase, but it wasn't a big problem. The autodrive's obstacle avoidance was quite strong, only slightly affecting my aim. Still, my shots were almost always on target, and the military sniper rifle, enhanced by my abilities, was extremely powerful, capable of penetrating 2 heads with a single bullet. Watching the villagers fall, Chun Lei was in agony. Everyone looked at him with pleading and hopeful eyes, now depending solely on him. "Chun Lei, think of something." In a moment of near despair, Chun Lei had a flash of inspiration. Opening his right hand, a blue light shone from his eyes and palm. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the ice right in front of my chase path. Under Chun Lei's continued effort, the crack widened, forcing me to temporarily halt my pursuit. Leaning out of the car window, I saw the crack extending for dozens of meters, effectively blocking my path. Standing on the car roof, I felt a chill thinking of the mutant's power to crack such thick ice. Fortunately, his ability didn't seem strong enough to completely break it open, or I might have ended up in the river with my car. I randomly fired a few more shots, killing a few more villagers until the crowd disappeared from my scope. I sighed deeply, realizing that fighting him on ice in the future was not an option. An ability to control ice and snow in this ice age was unimaginable. I had to use the alternate space to right the snowmobile and return to the shelter. The traps were mostly destroyed and needed reinstalling, but it wasn't a big loss, considering the number of invaders killed. Back home, Yang-mi was still weak from the gruesome scene, having vomited her meal. Shokir asked with concern, "Did you get rid of that mutant?" Sitting on the sofa, I replied nonchalantly, "That guy was too sneaky. I barely saw his figure. His ability is disgusting for escaping. Killing him is not easy. But mainly, I was too cautious, letting him slip away." At that moment, Yang-mi asked with a weak voice, "Zhang-yi, aren't we being too cruel? After all, killing is a crime. Aren't you afraid of being held accountable after the apocalypse?" I touched Yang-mi's cheek noncommittally. "What do you think?" Meanwhile, having just returned home, I also felt a bit hungry, so I asked Shokir to prepare some food, specifically asking for pig brain, duck gizzards, and large intestines. Hearing these dish names and recalling the bloody scene, Yang-mi began to vomit uncontrollably again. I teased her, "Are you too weak? Do you want some nutritious food tonight to replenish your body?" After the chaotic return to their village, everyone was terrified. They had expected the heroes to return laden with spoils, but the reality was a disheveled retreat, with nearly half the people missing. There were cries of despair everywhere. Some were searching for their husbands, others for their sons. Both survivors and the bereaved were in profound grief. Chun-Lei, not knowing what to do, stood in the snowstorm. He had warned them beforehand. Then, his cousin grabbed Chun-Lei's arm, urgently shouting, "Quick, check on third grandpa. He looks like he can't hold on. He wants to see you." Hearing that Su Dongsheng, his third grandpa, was in bad shape, Chun-Lei's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately ran towards his house. At Su Dongsheng's door, it was crowded with people. All the villagers looked at Chun-Lei with complex eyes. Although the survivors knew Chun-Lei had saved them, others did not share the sentiment. Their faces showed no gratitude, but rather blame and even disgust. A woman, wiping her tears, said bitterly, "Of all the Su family, only you are lucky, possessing extraordinary powers. But why didn't you go at the start? You caused my son's death." Some even cursed him openly. "You coward. Give me back my husband's life." Chun-Lei helplessly replied in a low voice, "I didn't ask them to go. They didn't listen to my advice and insisted on going." This response only angered the villagers more, as they pointed fingers at him and accused, "You coward. If you had charged in at the beginning, using your special abilities, we wouldn't have been bombed to death." Chun-Lei was furious, but he was used to being timid in the village and didn't dare to retort in front of the family elders. Then, a scholarly elder came out of the house and said, "Let's say a few words less. This isn't Chun-Lei's fault. Come in. The elder is calling for you." At this moment, Su Dongsheng was lying on the bed, barely clinging to life. Seeing Chun-Lei arrive, he spoke with a face full of guilt. "It's all my fault. If I had listened to your advice, so many of our Su family members wouldn't have died. I've really become senile. Now I understand that our village was able to stand firm after the snow disaster entirely because of your abilities." Su Dongsheng had an epiphany, but it was too late. He held Chun-Lei's hand and said, "I've explained to the others in the family. This operation was entirely my responsibility. Let them blame me." This old man, "I know the villagers are saying things about you, but I hope you won't hold it against them. Our Su family can't afford to fight among ourselves. We can't break the lineage of the Su family." As Su Dongsheng spoke, tears streamed down his face. "So, I only ask one thing of you before I go. Protect the Su family well." Chun-Lei, tears in his eyes, nodded repeatedly. "After I'm gone, I entrust the Su family to you. That's it. I need to rest for a while. You can go out." With that, Su Dongsheng passed away. Chun-Lei quickly called the people waiting outside. Seeing Su Dongsheng with his eyes closed, the Su family members immediately burst into tears. Noticing no one paid attention to him, Chun-Lei quietly left the house. After receiving his third grandpa's last request, Chun-Lei walked back with a strange feeling in his heart. He knew that if Zhang-Yi really came to kill them, he had no choice but to flee. He thought he was the chosen one, only to find out he was just cannon fodder. Just as he dejectedly reached his home, he saw a young woman waiting at his doorstep. Seeing Chun-Lei, the girl quickly approached him. "Are you brother Chun-Lei?" Chun-Lei's face turned red, and he stammered, "Yes, that's me. Who are you?" The girl's eyes were filled with gratitude. "I'm Su Lily. I came to thank you for saving my father. He told me that you risked your life to save him today." Chun-Lei, not knowing what to do, scratched the back of his head. "It's nothing. It's what I should do." It was then that Chun-Lei realized he was not a sinner, but a hero of the village. Su Lily said shyly, looking down, "My father is still injured and couldn't come himself, so he asked me to thank you in person. But we didn't have anything to bring as a gift, so I came empty-handed." Chun-Lei waved his hands shyly. "Don't be so formal. We are all part of the Su family. I'll definitely help if I can." After a few moments of small talk, Su Lily turned and disappeared into the snow. At that moment, Chun-Lei was still unable to calm down, his heart racing uncontrollably. He felt that he had deeply fallen in love with Su Lily, even thinking of names for their future children. This otaku, who had sworn never to fall for a three-dimensional woman, had so easily betrayed betrayed his own belief. Chun-Li, with a determined look, clenched his fists, resolving to protect the Su family villagers and provide a stable environment for Su Lily and their future child. Back home, Chun-Li had to think of a strategy. 2 encounters with Zhang Yi had made him acutely aware of Zhang Yi's terrifying nature. However, he had promised Third Grandpa to protect the village, and now, with love in his life, he couldn't let that demon ruin his happiness. But he feared Zhang Yi might come in a fit of rage to annihilate the village. How should he handle this? A direct confrontation would surely result in his instant defeat. After much thought, he concluded that there was only one way to resolve this situation definitively: negotiation. Excited by this idea, although risky, he was ready to risk it all for the Su family and his beloved Su Lily. He hurriedly started searching for Zhang Yi's contact information on his computer, fantasizing that Su Lily must like him as he had saved her father's life. According to TV drama plots, she must have a secret crush on him. The next morning, I cautiously stepped out, fixing the damage traps, thinking the Su family was unlikely to dare another attack. Still, I prepared for a potential second wave of enemies. Ordinary people posed almost no threat to my shelter, but I had to be wary of awakened mutants. Thinking about the Ice and Snow mutant, I still harbored a bit of admiration for him, as his style was somewhat similar to mine, both very cautious about our lives. However, since I couldn't use him for my own purposes, I had to eliminate him beforehand. Shou Kir has been wholeheartedly devoted to me for a long time, and Yang Mi, after the Su family town battle, lost her hope for the apocalypse's end. She used to believe the snow disaster was temporary, and the world would return to its former state, where she would be a dazzling star again. However, witnessing the brutal deaths of over 100 people shook her belief. She chose to rely on me, not superficially, but genuinely wanting to be close. Just then, a phone call suddenly came in, startling me. Instantly, I thought of Lu Fengda and how my biggest secret had been exposed. Who could be contacting me now? But this time, I was much more composed as I answered the phone. Before I could speak, an excited voice came through. "Hello, Zhang Yi. This is Chun-Li from Su Family Town. Do you have a moment? I have something to discuss with you." Hearing it was someone from Su Family Town, I instantly became alert. After yesterday's attack, I had no good feelings towards their village and was planning when to annihilate them. Chun-Li continued, "I was wondering if we could reconcile and avoid troubling each other in the future." Hearing this, I laughed. "I never troubled you. It was always you who provoked me." "What? Now you realize you can't beat me and want to make peace? You're quite optimistic." On the other end of the phone, Chun-Li immediately became nervous. He was already very fearful in